When I first met my friend Casey, we went through the ritual of showing each other our characters, as artists do. One of her characters was Daniel Valentine, a charismatic young man whose color scheme resembled that of the soda Mellow Yellow. His name used to be Mellow Yellow, Casey explained, and proceeded to show me her plethora of characters inspired by beverages. It turns out that this was a result of the beverage folk fandom. It was no surprise to me that a whole community blossomed from making art of personified beverages. People have been anthropomorphizing non-human things since the beginning of time. However, what did surprise me was that the origins of the beverage folk fandom branched out from a completely different fandom. And that fandom was a phenomenon in and of itself, and one you may have heard of. Some only believe it was a myth. Some make jokes comparing new popular characters to this particular character, which formed an entire fandom based on him and him alone. No, it's not Bill Cipher. No, it's not Sans Undertale. That's right, I'm talking about the one, the only, the Onceler. The Onceler is a character from Dr. Seuss's beloved story, The Lorax, a cautionary tale about how we should care for our environment more, and not get greedy with our resources. He was a corporate monster portrayed simply by a pair of green arms sticking out of different places, and a pair of eyes behind a boarded window. He was an incredibly elusive character, defined by his lack of face and body. However, in 2012, Illumination Entertainment, yes, the same people who created the Nightmare Tic Tacs we all know as Minions, adapted The Lorax into a full-length feature film, and in it, the Onceler was no longer a pair of arms, but a gangly, very animated, young twink sporting a trilby. Now, why is it the Onceler fandom and not just the Lorax fandom? Why wouldn't people just proclaim themselves fans of the actual movie and not just one singular character? You hardly ever see entire fandoms cropping up for just one singular character. The explanation is very simple, actually. The Lorax is a bad movie.
Yeah, bad. Right.
It may be bright, colorful, and well animated, but it has trouble with pacing, and it somehow manages to completely miss the point of the original story. Instead of making it about how you, the reader, need to do something or else the world is gonna completely destroy itself, it's about how this kid, voiced by Zac Efron, wants to bring the trees back so he can bone down with this chick voiced by T. Swift. It's a really silly movie full of incredibly pointless drivel and hypnotizing imagery to make your kids sit down and shut up for 90 minutes. It's just not good. However, there is one factor of the movie that was actually intriguing and entertaining, and that factor was, you guessed it, the Onceler. Unlike the original story, this Onceler is humanized, pulled away from his former mysterious constraints, and we, as an audience, get to feel empathy for the character that was originally corporate greed personified. And as much as the movie tries to frame this guy as some sort of secondary protagonist, he is still a bad guy, sorry. But I mean, since he's white, cute, and conventionally attractive, I guess that makes it okay. Let's face it, yeah, the Onceler is a cartoon character, but he is cute. He's got a very distinct, fun, and animated personality that you can literally see through his very exaggerated movements and body language. He's an endearing and fun character, and you can't help but smile when he's on screen. And look, he's not the first character that kids flock to because of how expressive and animated he was. There are plenty of animated characters out there that aren't even necessarily attractive by looks alone, but once you see them express their personality through motion, you can't help but be intrigued. And that brings me to the point that will drive it all home on why the Onceler took Tumblr by storm in 2012. And that's the infamous song. How bad can I While the song isn't necessarily good, nor are any of the musical numbers in the movie, I'll be damned if it isn't catchy. Not only that, but this is the one sequence in the entire movie that flows well when it comes to choreography, animation, and even sound design. Honestly, seeing this scene in the theater was a religious experience, especially when he crawls toward the camera and you can hear his pocket watch jingle. Not only was the sequence just chock full of wonderful animation, but it showed a flawless shift in the Onceler's demeanor, going from the bouncy, fun-loving kid gradually turning into a complete douche canoe, and then we get to just... I mean, could this be a fetish thing? Could be a fetish thing. Anyway, this segment of the movie is a measly 3 minutes. The bulk of the original story was condensed into 3 minutes. There were only 3 whole minutes where this movie was good. Needless to say, it had everyone craving more, pushing everyone to create fan content to fill that empty hole in our hearts that the rest of the movie made. And hold on, let's go back a year and zoom in on a different fandom, particularly the Homestuck fandom. Back in April of 2011, a trend was starting on Tumblr utilizing the Ask function. Thanks to a blog titled Ask Homestuck, where you could send questions to any of the characters from the webcomic, Ask blogs began to take off in every conceivable shape and form. Everyone and their mother was nabbing every possible Ask character URL. The moment characters were summoned into existence, Ask blogs were a hit, with people even making cosplay gifs and pictures in reaction to questions. Some people even making voice clips.
That's not fault.
In 2012, Ask Tumblr was definitely at its prime. And therefore, Ask the Onceler was, yes, definitely a thing. In fact, there are over 400 Onceler blogs known to date. Yes, I counted. Onceler Ask blogs absolutely lit on fire because of one very essential fact. The Onceler was attractive to all these, they were called Oncelets. Yes, that's real. And they wanted to draw porn of him. Who could they draw him with, though? Oh, that's right, himself. There's a very clear division between the Onceler and the Greedler, as the fandom called him, giving Oncelets the excuse to draw Oncest. Yes, that's the word. At the beginning of this Onceler Ask blog boom, there were originally just different iterations of either the good, woobified Onceler or the evil, sharp-toothified Onceler, until those started branching off more and more. There was Bitter Onceler, who was the Onceler after he was filled with regret after chopping down the last truffula tree. There was 72 Onceler, the original Onceler from the 1972 cartoon. There was Oneler, who was a cannibal? For some reason. Anyway, people started going absolutely nuts, grabbing any Onceler Ask URL they could think of. There were no limits with this. As long as you add lure to it, it worked. Embodiments of beverages? Check. Embodiments of the 7 deadly sins? You got it, mate. Embodiments of... Alright. Seriously, it got so bad that people were grabbing URLs for Onceler Ask blogs for the sole purpose that those blogs weren't created. Needless to say, there were definitely more popular Ask blogs, and things just got out of control. The more popular Oncelers started interacting and becoming friends, getting shipped with each other. People started making high school AUs, anime AUs, gender bent AUs, and before we knew it, there was a massive post-apocalyptic AU where people were getting infected from spores from truffula trees, and all the different iterations of the Onceler had to fight together. It was actually really good, not gonna lie. Truffula flu, look it up. In the end, the Onceler fandom started to fizzle out, partially due to de-Oncelerization. These Onceler blogs got so off track from the original, they ended up being their own, and people changed up a few factors and gave these characters names, thus de-Oncelerifying them. Remember what I said about beverage folk? That started with this guy, a Pepsi Gajinka inspired by Swag Onceler's love of the drink Pepsi, till making Gajinkas of drinks became its own separate thing. There tends to be a lot of debate on what makes an OC original. Creators are often looked down upon when the origins of their characters are revealed, whether it be a self-insert, a character inspired by an inanimate object or animal, or a character with 3 degrees of separation from the infamous Tumblr god the Onceler. But here's the thing. You don't need to make a character completely out of nothing in order for it to be considered original. You're always going to be inspired by someone or something. Sometimes it's someone or something that somebody has already made. You like that alliteration, Dr. Seuss? And that's okay. We, as creators, inspire each other and build and modify our own creations based on things we see each other make. No matter what you start with, the filter you put it through will be all your mistakes and imperfections. And that's what makes stuff truly original. People joke about the Onceler fandom constantly, comparing new characters, girls fawn over to him, saying, "Oh look, there's a new Onceler in town," saying how bizarre it was that people were so taken by this character, they literally took him and ran with it. But in retrospect, it all makes sense. And the fact that people were able to create different versions of him, then different versions of that him, and branch off and make their own creations is actually pretty cool. But especially when the origin point was essentially a blank slate. Also, I mean, look at Bowsette. Pretty much the same thing started happening with the Bowsette phenomenon. Why didn't anyone compare her to the Onceler or make fun of that whole business? Well, sexism, that's why.